Hello everyone and welcome back to Colouring with Kate. Thank you for joining me today. So welcome back to part 3 of my options in colouring books. So last time we looked at acrylic paint and there's a few versions there, and we looked at watercolour paint, and then in part 2 I think we looked at watercolour crayons, particularly the Neocolor 2, and also pre-preparing your pages with gesso or satin glazing liquid. So in this video I was going to cover distress inks and Inktense blocks or pencils. So we'll start with distress inks. So I'll just put this aside. So I store my distress inks in this sort of a craft box. I think I got it from a shop called The Range, or it could have been Hobbycraft in the UK. So it opens out like this. I can't have it on the camera fully, I think, so I'll do the best I can. So what I have here at this top bit is my mini distress inks, and then I have these soft sponges which you attach to these applicators, so the black end there and the velcro, and then you can use that as a tool. So I've got a couple of them. I've also got some of these thin sort of dowel ones. In fact, they're called detail blending tools. I don't really think they work that well, so I wouldn't buy them again. I've got these applicators as well, which work okay. So just put them onto your finger like that, onto the ink pad, and then use them. I also have this ink duster, which I bought from a while ago, actually, a few years back, from inklicious.co.uk. So I've got some of them, and then I've got a few of the large size inks, such as Distress Oxides and the Distress inks as well. So that's basically my Distress ink box with the Distress ink tools, and I'll just put that to the side. So I'll show you some examples of this as well, but first let's start with Distress inks. So we might start with a green. So I've got, bring you in a little bit closer, I've got Mowed Lawn, and I just pick one of my sponges and attach it, and I'm going to use that to show you how that comes out. So in this little block here, and then just do this, and then maybe take off some of the excess. Actually, it's coming out quite nicely. So, and then I just go in circular motions like this, and it usually works quite well with this, you know, with this wooden tool, which is by Ranger, I think, and I think it's well worth buying. So that's one of the greens, and I might use a, let's see, a peacock feathers to go with it. So I'm going to get my other tool now, so just bear with me, like that, pop that on there, and then, okay, get some excess off, and then lightly, so I'm using it quite lightly, and then I sort of press on when I want it to blend, and that's not too bad. I'm very much learning with distress inks. I mean, the expert is, as most of us know, is Zucchini Kitty, who uses them regularly. I use them now and again, but not particularly frequently. But yeah, I think that's quite nice. I'm quite impressed with myself. I think that's quite good. So that's that. When I use this tool for, you know, to get around the edges, because obviously there's the actual image. It is a little bit hard. I don't think they work quite as well, and you can see that it comes out quite dark. So I wouldn't really suggest buying them unless that's the effect you want. I suppose you could try to blend it in then with that, but you can see that you've, you know, applied it darker there than there. So if I want to get nearer to the edges of, say, the image, then I just use the sponge, and I sort of This is what I usually do anyway. And then sort of just put the edges there and then go in a bit closer. Now I do get some on the image because it's just impossible not to get it on the image. So some will come onto the image, but it gets covered up really easily with coloured pencil anyway, so I don't really worry about it too much. But you can see that this works better where you just use the sponge directly and go along the edges. Got a dark bit there, but that can happen sometimes, but you can just press harder to try to, you know, blend it out a little bit. So that is how I usually get to the edges of the image as best I can. The other option is, I've got a spare one of these finger sort of sponges that you have as well. Have varying success with that, really. So again, into the edge here. So sometimes I use them. It's basically trial and error. And I suppose the more you use it, the better you get at it. So that is the other option, and they're quite cheap on Amazon. These, I don't really know what their proper name is, but if you type in Daubers, I think it is, Daubers, yeah, that might be it actually, its name. So yeah, so I use the sponge itself to get to near the edges of the image, and then these sponge daubers, I think that's their actual name. The other thing that I could use, so we'll go for a different colour now. We'll go for a brownie colour. I don't think that's actually colour brownie, but brown. So I've got here Walnut Stain, and so using these ink dusters. So the big ink pads, they just work the same as well. So just sort of get some on there, then on a scrap piece of paper, any excess off, and then, oops, seem to have got ink on my hand and everywhere else. So I'm going to do it here. I'm really, really messy, so I do apologise. And this gives you a softer look. Sort of dab it off a little bit, and then I just, if I want a softer look with my distress ink, then I use my ink dusters. And again, if I want to blend it out a little bit with a slightly different colour, then I will now use Rusty Hinge. Dab off the excess, and then just, I really like this colour, Rusty Hinge. And there we go. So if you want a softer look, that is one of the options. So like I say, if it's really difficult to get to the edges, because some books are very, very detailed, then I use coloured pencil, get the shade as close as possible and sort of fill it in, and that works quite well. I'll show you a picture with which I did that as well, show you some examples. So yes, that's using the ink blending ink duster. If I remember, which I hopefully should do, I will put the links in for where you can buy these ink dusters as well. Okay, so that's your distress inks, but before I go on, of course, to get an effect that you can add water, because that's the whole point of being a distress ink, and then sort of spray it on. Put a little bit too much on there, like this, and then get in a little bit of kitchen towel, let it work in a little bit for a few seconds, of course. So it's going to sort of make a white patchy effect. While it's doing that, actually, I'll show you some examples before I dab the water off. So let's move out a little bit. So this here is a page from Joanna Basford's Flourish, which is free and available online. It was released during lockdown, and what I've done here is a background in distress inks, and then it was difficult to get into the close to some of these edges here, so I did use I think my Faber-Castell Polychromos to sort of, because they've got a range of colours, so I chose shades that were similar to the Distress ink, and then you can't particularly tell that I've done that because I think it works okay. So yeah, that's an example of Distress inks used for the background on this image. And then another one also is this one here. So this is done with Distress inks. The whole background is done with Distress inks, and then just around the border some more Distress ink as well. So that's that one. So now back to this, you can see that it started to have the desired effect, so you can see the sort of whitish sort of bits there. I'll bring you in a bit closer so you can see. I hope you can make that out, that effect there. So a picture where I have done that, bring you out again so you can see. A picture where I have used the water, to sort of produce the white speckled effect is in Worlds Within Worlds. So this is the clock. So that's all done in Distress ink, and then I used pencil, where I thought it needed it to get close to the image, because this is quite detailed. So there's lots of little bits that you have to get into to do the background, and then I used water, splashes of water for that, and that's how that came out. Okay, so I think that includes the Distress ink as a possible option for your backgrounds. So next we will look at Inktense blocks and pencils. Okay, so I have a few Inktense pencils here in blues, some various blues, violets I've got there, and greens. So sometimes if the picture is very detailed and there's lots of intricate bits, then I will use my Inktense pencils to sort of do the background, because they allow me to get really close to all the intricate bits to do the background. But if the background is on an image which isn't as detailed, then I'll use Inktense blocks. And all I have in my stash is Inktense blocks, the 12 pack. So this one. I wrote the colours down as well because they're quite, I couldn't find them on the actual tin, which is a bit weird, because I would have expected the colours to be listed. But anyway, there's that. And then I bought a few open stock from Cult Pens. I think it was Cult Pens, and that's a great way to try them out. So if you know that you use for your background a lot of, well, I do anyway, for a lot of blues and greens, whatever colours, you could just buy a few open stock and then use them for your background. So if you don't want to buy the entire, a set, if you don't want to buy a set and you just want to buy like 3 or 4. Okay, so we're going to just use the block. I mean, it's like you can use the block straight onto the paper. It does give you a very intense colour, and I just sort of scribble it on. There's no real technique with this one. They dissolve quite well. The only thing is that you can't rework them, and they do dry quite quickly, so you do need to work fairly quickly as well when you are using your water. Let's get the dust off there. It's a little broken one, but it still works fine. So there's that. So that's one way to do it, and then you can get your water brush. So here's my trusted Arteza water brush. Sorry, I should have brought you closer. You can tell I'm still a novice at filming, but I think I'm more confident than I used to be. So yeah, you can see fairly quickly, maybe working in little circles. And yeah, you can obviously, you don't have to use a water brush, you can use a paint brush itself with, you know, dipping it into water and stuff. So a very, very intense colour you can get with that. Just add in a little bit more water just to make sure it's all dissolved. Wiping off some colour. So yeah, that's it. So that's the example. The other way you could do it is get your Inktense block and then just put your water brush on it directly and paint with it like that. That's always an option. And also if you want to mix colours, you also have a palette on there, little spaces. I don't know if you get it with the bigger sets because I haven't got a bigger set to do it with. I mean, I'm not going to do it properly here, but you get the idea. Maybe a bit of green. And then, what else shall I add? Well, you can see that basically you can use a palette for mixing there. Not that I've ever done that in the past, I've just done it in front of you now, which wasn't a great success. But there you see, there you are. Anyway, so yeah, so you can do it directly off, you know, have your brush to the actual, to the block. And that's it. And then you've got your pencils, and of course you have the same pencil names as the Inktense block, so you could use the Inktense block for much of the area. Let me just see if I've got, right, okay, so I've got, this is a violet, so I could use the violet for this. I can't actually see the name on this. Let's see, 0820, what's violet? Violet is 0800, so they do have a number on them. Not that one, so it might be this one here. Just bear with me, please. Right, so this one's the 0800. So if you've got the pencils and the blocks, you can use the pencils to get close to the intricate details, like I'm doing here, and then have, I don't know how this is going to work out because I've never actually done it, but you could have the block there, and you should get the same sort of colour payoff. Yeah, they're exactly the same. So having the blocks and the pencils together would work really well, you know, allow you to get close to the images when you're doing your background. Okay, so that's the Inktense blocks. So yeah, I need to really use them more for my backgrounds because I don't use them as often as I should. So bring it out, and I just want to show you a few examples, well, a couple of examples of where I've used the Inktense blocks and pencils. So in Drommenvanger by Tomislav Tomic, I did it on this double page. I used Inktense, and Inktense is just so vibrant. You can just see the colours are so lovely, bright and beautiful. So yeah, so I use Inktense pencils and blocks for this. Mainly I think I use pencil because there's a lot of detail on there. Just take that off. And then another example is in Joanna Basford's Lost Ocean, and so I used Inktense pencils, I think, for this. Yeah, I think this must have been the Inktense pencils, but to be honest I can't really remember, but it was one of them, either the blocks, the pencils, or probably even both. So yeah, so that's that one. Hope you can see it all there. So yeah, so those are the two options, the Distress Inks and the Inktense blocks and the pencils. So I hope that was useful, even a tiny little bit, and I hope to see you in the next instalment for my background options in colouring books. Until then, take care and bye.